Let's speak now to our senior political analyst, Marwan Bishara, who joins us live from Paris. And Marwan, I know you were listening to that. And beyond the doctor's shocking description of the situation on the ground there, the people dealing with those who are wounded and killed, there were two distinct moments, weren't there? One of which was Riyad Mansour, the Palestinian ambassador, breaking down with emotion as he described the situation. And then in contrast, the stringent defiance from the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations.
Absolutely, the contrast is extraordinary. Before I get to that, Nick, let me just address the question that the doctor talked about, because this has been almost 2 years. So I think I don't blame our viewers around the world if they lose track of what exactly went down in terms of Israel's destruction of the health services, the hospitals, and so on in Gaza. If you remember, back in October 17, 2023, only 10 days after the war started, that's when the first attack against Al-Ahli Hospital took place, when several hundred people were killed. From then on, they took on Al-Shifa Hospital, the central hospital in Gaza, and after that, basically much of the health services were rendered inoperable in Gaza. After, as well, Israel cut the medical aid coming into the strip. So what the doctor is describing is the culmination of 19 months of Israel's attempts at making health service impossible for children, for all people, for any Gazans. And that had led to, as many reports we've heard, operations done without anesthesia and so on and so forth. This has turned into a war on hospitals. And that's the kind of thing that makes Riyad Mansour weep as he does. And it's, I think, for him, making that testimony again and again, repeating more of the same over 19 months with, almost silence, crickets. You would hear, of course, people responding, talking, and so on and so forth, but not enough in order to resolve the issue. While on the other hand, as you said, the Israeli ambassador repeats the same mantras, the same lies, but he's getting more and more aggressive. And I'm not sure what the mechanism is at the United Nations. I'm not an expert. But certainly in this sort of a situation, he needs to be reprimanded. He needs to be suspended, even if Israel's membership remains the same. But this kind of attitude, this kind of attack, unsubstantiated by an ambassador against the United Nations, really something's going to give there. But having said all of that, just briefly, I would say that his aggressivity hides behind it a terrible weakness, a terrible retreat, a terrible loss on the part of the Israeli government. I think they are on the defensive and they are lashing out.
Indeed. Have a listen to this on that point, because while Israel's use of starvation as a weapon of war has been condemned universally, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu denies those accusations. This is what Netanyahu has been saying.
We take thousands of prisoners. We sort them out into civilians and into combatants, and we photograph them. And you can see those photographs, those videos. What's the first thing you do when you take a prisoner in Gaza? The first thing you do is you tell them, take your shirt off. We want to see that there's no suicide vest. Thousands and thousands of prisoners have taken their shirt off. And you don't see one, not one, emaciated. Not a single case. From the beginning of the war till the present. In fact, you see quite the opposite, because you don't get that much exercise, certainly not in tunnels, but you get food. And we're accused of starvation.
So, Marwan, what do you make of that?
Look, I have been a student of Israel politics for the past 30 years, since Netanyahu basically took office in 1996. In fact, I was there at the Madrid International Press Conference when he and Hanan Ashrawi went head-to-head, and she humiliated him with her better sound bites and more articulate representation of the Palestinian delegation at the time. That was more than 30 years ago. So you can imagine I have had to deal with this for the past 30 years, listening to Netanyahu lie, and lie again. But it's not just me. Everyone that knows Netanyahu, including Smotrich, his own finance minister, what did he call Netanyahu? He called him the liar of all liars. That's Smotrich, his own minister of finance. Here in France, President Sarkozy told President Obama and at the time Prime Minister of Britain, he told them, I can't deal with this guy, he's such a liar. And basically everyone agreed. So you can imagine this pathological riots continues to lie. And he's talking now about a video. A video. You know how many videos there are out there by journalists and by humanitarian organizations of children starving, of children fighting for food in Gaza, and he still does not think that there is famine or would not admit that there's famine, that he's weaponizing hunger in Gaza. But he has that one video or few videos of prisoners that were taken, but all the countless other videos should be discounted. The reality on the ground should be discounted. The fact that he has imposed a siege on Gaza should be discounted. The fact that he admitted himself a few days ago that his supporters in the West are telling him, we can no longer support you if you continue to starve the people in Gaza. He admitted it live. And now he's saying, we starve the people in Gaza. Go figure, right?
Mm-hmm. To your previous point of this almost, as you put it, this kind of desperate defence we're getting from the Israelis, is the tide turning? Is the momentum building when you have the likes of the UK ambassador, who we heard this evening at the UN Security Council, the French ambassador as well, and we've also heard from the German Chancellor being highly critical of Israel. Is the tide turning, and where could it lead?
You know, there's absolutely no doubt that the evolution in public opinion against Israel's policies in Gaza, against Israel's behavior in Gaza, against Israel's fascist, fanatical government is growing by the day and has been doing so at least the past several months. I'm not going to say a year or more, several months. Since at least Netanyahu went back to war, roared back into fighting after March ceasefire, there is a growing animosity, hatred, and even regret for having supported him or for having been silent in the first place. Now, why is that important? It's important because public opinion at large is also changing, even in the United States. The YouGov poll in the United States shows that only Republicans over the age of 50, men, I would gather, have favorable view of Israel. All the rest of the American society is against. In Europe, it's the same thing. The only thing was holding us for a while, was holding up, were the elites who basically are in bed with governments and the governments. The governments are changing their positions. They're changing their tune. And that in and by itself now is changing the tune of the elites. So the media is changing, the business is changing its tune on the question of Gaza. So I think there's a gathering storm. There's a snowballing effect happening, and it's happening actually fast. Every day you sense that governments are changing their positions, elites are changing their positions, and public opinion is exponentially going against Israel. So in short, Israel is terribly isolated today in the world, with the exception of Trump and his clique of evangelicals and billionaire Zionists. There isn't much for Israel around the world. That's why I would think if, for example, on the question of Iran or any other question, Trump decided to tweet or whatever he does in his Truth Social, say it's time for Netanyahu to go, I don't think Netanyahu could hold for a day.
Interesting. Marwan, thanks for that. That's our senior political analyst, Marwan Bishara, speaking to us from Paris. Thanks a lot.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.